Welcome /malicious compliance. Allergies are not important to the Home Depot. Edit. Reddit doesn't allow me to change the title of posts. I do not want to cast any slander towards the Home Depot. The title should probably read this: Bob doesn't care about your allergies. This happened about 5 years ago, and I haven't been to the Home Depot in question in a long time. Names have been changed for privacy. In high school, I was working at the local Home Depot as a head cashier. I kept track of all the active registers and made sure things ran smoothly. I held this position for quite some time, 1 to 2 years, and enjoyed it pretty well. Customers were nice, and my coworkers were mostly craftsmen and gardeners, all with interesting stories to share. Before we go further, let me explain something. I'm allergic to nearly every form of pollen. I mean every form. I take allergy medication, but even then, if I'm in close proximity to flowers for too long, 30 minutes, I will begin to break out in hives and throw up most of the time. So after about 3 months working in the winter, the spring season was upon us, the worst season for my allergies. One day, about 3 of our garden section cashiers called off sick. They are pretty reliable people, so I had no problem finding people to cover for them. As I come to my manager to inform them of the position changes, my manager looks at me and says, "You can handle the garden section on your own, can't you?" I inform my manager that I could cover it for at most 15 minutes before my allergies flare up and I'll have to leave. He states, "We don't have any documents on file that state you are not fit to work in the garden section, so unless you come to me with a doctor's note stating your allergies, I couldn't give less of a fuck." I don't know who shit in his Cheerios that morning, but I complied, saying, "I want to be sure of what you are asking. You want me to work in a section which is hazardous to my health instead of placing equally capable employees in that section?" Did I stutter? He said, "Okay, sure," I said. I make my way down to the garden section, and immediately my eyes are stinging. I decide that I'm going to stick it out for my boss's sake, no matter how shitty my service becomes. The first 10 minutes are pretty uneventful, but then a customer asks me about the rash on my arms. The Home Depot does not care about allergies, I say, as I do not have official paperwork. This customer looks extremely concerned, asking for my manager's name. At this point, I was feeling nausea hit me. I throw up in the trash can at the register, turn back to smile as well as I could, and say I work under Bob. The customer reassures me that I will be okay and tells me I should head home. Turns out, this guy, Nick, was a higher up at the Home Depot's regional management and was my boss's boss. So, naturally, I comply with the chain of command and head to the locker room to pack up. As I'm packing, Bob comes in, fuming and cursing, telling me I have no right to leave yet and that my shift is not over for another 5 hours. I simply say Nick told me to go home. Bob's face gets redder as he threatens to fire me, saying I was lying, and tells me to go back out. I comply, knowing that I will see Nick on my way out. I pass Nick, still in the orange apron, and he asks me where I'm going. I say that Bob told me to go back to work. Nick's expression goes from concerned to furious as he takes my apron from me and tells me I'll be paid for the full shift and to go home. I come into work the next day to see that Bob's nameplate has been removed from the office. I ask our hours rep what happened, and apparently, after I had left, Nick stormed Bob's office and proceeded to perform an audit on all of his past employee complaints. This guy had been throwing out complaints for the past 5 years. Needless to say, there was an opening for the store management position, and I was given a week's vacation for my troubles. My satisfaction was huge. Edit. I realize now that the title may look like I'm putting down Home Depot. That wasn't my intent. I just wanted to recount my experience. I called in sick twice in a row to work once, and both times they told me if I can't find a replacement I would have to come in anyway. I didn't find a replacement and didn't come in. Day 3 I came in, and management sent me home after an hour because I was passing out on the counter. The next 2 days I tried calling in again, same bull about finding a replacement. I had tonsillitis. When I turned in my 2 weeks notice, because they weren't respecting my school schedule, they told me that I wasn't meeting their standards. LMAO, it was a minimum wage movie theater job where they wouldn't give me a raise, but they expected me to train people that somehow were hired at more than I was making, and I was told they wouldn't be needing me to work 2 weeks and I could leave. I've never danced my way out of work so fast. Figured the manager who told me to leave would be capable of explaining why I was gone to the 2 managers who begged me not to quit for 3 months. I ended up getting a job at the library paying a lot better for the rest of my time in school, and then got a job in TV news as soon as I finished school, so I think I made the right choice. IDK, though sometimes people just are lazy and want to get out of the shitty jobs. At one of the restaurants I used to work, there was a woman who refused to do the dishes because she was allergic to the crappy pink soap that came in gallon jugs. Every other employee and shift manager would take a turn or two during the week of doing the dishes. The day I became a shift manager, I went to the store and bought Dawn soap and those extra long rubber gloves. Told her she was doing dishes for her side work today and she snapped. She immediately started texting the general manager and complaining how she didn't have to get a call from the general manager and had to explain to him there is soap she isn't allergic to here and that she knows it, but omitted it from her texts. After the call, I once again informed her that her task for the day would be dishes and there would be no pawning it off on anybody else. She goes on a tantrum and storms out 2 hours before the end of her shift. It's later revealed by her coworker/roommate that she is not and never had been allergic to any dish soap. Instead, she just knew she could get out of her least favorite chore and nobody would call her on her shit. Nobody did. For 2.5 years. I can see where ops manager is coming from. Having to deal with the shit people try to pull can be exhausting. However, they should definitely have been more sympathetic to op and maybe checked up on them. Or even walked op out to the garden section and noticed the immediate severe reaction. I had a coworker who claimed a corn allergy, a severe anaphylactic shock, if she so much as touched it allergy. She did not inform management before she was hired or at all. She was talking to a coworker and my manager overheard her. My deli works with a fair amount of corn chips, cornmeal in the potato wedges and cornmeal breading for the fried chicken, so manager had her on the slices only until she cut her finger. While she was in the office waiting for the medical clinic to send a car, she said she was feeling faint and asked the store director to get her a Pepsi. Pepsi has high fructose corn syrup. Long story short, she likely wasn't allergic to corn as she was seen multiple times drinking Pepsi, and she ate a potato wedge out of the trash. She was later fired for, as it was told to me by a coworker, getting into it with a customer, insulting their mother, and then followed them around the store begging for them not to make a complaint. Edit. Lisa probably wasn't allergic to corn. My theory, she was told she was, and didn't question it. She once claimed that standing too near the corn chips was making her throat itch, but was unable to get a doctor's note in the 4 months she worked for us. Her mom gave her prescription medicine. Lisa didn't say which medicines, but one shouldn't take prescription drugs that weren't prescribed to you. Finally, having worked with her, I can tell you she wasn't playing with a full deck of cards. She wasn't a bad person. I kind of liked her, but she was not a good worker. If y'all want, I can't make a post and go into more detail. My comment is long enough, haha. The problem is the store level managers only care about sales numbers. Their pay is structured around making bonus and they have daily goals to hit. I worked at a Home Depot part-time. They scheduled me outside of my availability. I spoke to 2 managers and a department head weeks in advance about it. Had to call district hours to get it fixed. They had the nerve to ask me to work that day after the fact. There's another incident of Home Depot firing a black employee for refusing to help a customer who made racist remarks. It's a horrible company. Employee complaints are typically just that, complaints registered by employees. They typically range from interpersonal conflicts, discrimination complaints, harassment complaints, etc., to payroll issues, scheduling, improper checks, altered time clocks, etc., to safety issues, unsafe work conditions, damaged equipment, etc. If this guy was throwing them out instead of properly addressing them, there's all kinds of fallout that could land on the heads of the people above this guy. Everything from OSHA violations to harassment lawsuits to financial audits. And more that I'm likely not thinking of. Ignorance of a situation isn't a good defense when it's your job to know after all. And when a higher up finds out that someone below them was deliberately making sure they were ignorant, all hell tends to break loose on that poor fool. I had a manager like that. The company had good policies, but unfortunately when a manager ignores them, they don't mean jack shit. This guy could not get in trouble, no matter what he did. The store manager was a friend of his, and let him off the hook all the time. He bought cheaper ingredients from unapproved suppliers, forced people to come in on their days off or stay late, yelled at people for things out of their control, tried to make us overcharge customers, etc. I didn't find out until after he left he had been making punch corrections on my shifts to avoid paying me overtime too. My hours casually made a comment about a worker whose name was identical to mine. Every time needs a punch correction. You need one too. I had been perfectly punctual. Never forgot to clock in or out. I should not have had punch corrections. This same guy scheduled people for 11:45 p.m. Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, and apparently they didn't get the holiday pay for Thanksgiving because they didn't clock in during the holiday. We once filed a bunch of complaints against him, but the other employees finalized it on my day off, so I wasn't there. They were called into the office and forced to tell him every single complaint they filed against him and read it word for word to his face. Those other workers were no longer there a week later. He faced no repercussions. I filed a complaint about a pizza worker because he was unhinged and on drugs all the time. He was verbally abusive and borderline violent. Head made threats and scream at everybody. He berated me for 5 minutes in front of customers for placing a slice of pizza in the oven facing the wrong direction. Did he get in trouble? Nope. Manager apparently never filed my complaint.